You were an educator originally. At what point do you decide that you really should be an author? Are you a lifelong writer? Did you come to it through love of reading?
Definitely came through the love of reading. I never thought of myself as a writer, to be honest. Really, what happened is a story came to me, and I could not, like, it was waking me up out of my sleep. Like, I would literally wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd lay there, and my mind was just going and going and going. And I was like, I have to go to sleep. It's the middle of the night. At the time, I had very young children, like babies, and I was like, I need sleep. So I remember pulling out my notes app and just jotting down whatever was in my head, and then I could go back to sleep. I did that for probably 4 years. And then finally I said, what? Because even these were just like little snippets of things that were stuck in my head, and I could not, they weren't a cohesive anything. And so then I sat down and I was like, okay, can I write a book? And I will never forget trying to string together those random notes messages into a story. And it was like messy and not really making any sense, but I just like was practicing typing out a chapter. For example, I knew nothing of character development or scene structure. I didn't even know how to use a dialogue tag, which is like, comma, he said, period. Like, I didn't know how to do any of that. I just was like, let's try to see if I know how to write a story. So I took this mismatch of things and I kind of put them together, and it was a mess. It was a hot mess, but it satiated my appetite for writing. And so when I finished that, and I don't consider that actually finished because it wasn't really a thing, I sat down and I said, okay, I'm actually going to pursue writing a book to query to publish. And an idea, I decided that, and then nothing happened for a very long time. And then one morning I woke up at 5 a.m. literally, and I had an idea, and I knew my brain wasn't gonna, like, I've played this game with my brain for years. Like, when it has an idea, it's like a dog with a bone. I can't ignore it. So instead of fighting it, I opened my laptop and I just started typing. And a month later I had Wings of Ebony.
Is that, I mean, is that true to this day, that your brain gets a hold of a bone and I had this plan, I told my agent I was going to write this, but actually now I've got this I've got to do?
You know, I would say now I'm a lot more methodical, because before I was led by just sort of the creative passion. And now I'm realizing that unless I want to rewrite a book 19 times, I need to put some forethought in and get organized. I've also learned a lot more about character and plot and how those two intersect. And I am a religious outliner now. I used to just kind of write with emotion and like what I want, where I wanted the story to go. And that was great because it let me get out those sort of emotional pieces that are very important in my stories. All my stories are deeply emotional. I'm a Cancer, I don't know. So, but now I realize that those emotional pieces take a lot of massaging to fit into a plot, to have pacing that's engaging, to have thrilling sort of chapter endings, to engage the reader. And that's what I'm doing in revision. So now with Ashes of Gold, which is the second book that I put, that the end of the Wings of Ebony duology. So my second book that came out in January of this year, yes, this year, I was a lot more rigid with my outline. And so now I know what I'm going to do before I do it. In fact, now when I have that synopsis that we talked about, I will send that to my agent or my editor ahead of time and be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And the beautiful part about that is they can look at my synopsis from a bird's eye view and say, maybe move this here and move that here and then take this out. And I can do that work at the summary level so that I don't have to write it wrong. And so then my drafts just come out a lot cleaner. I also draft a lot slower. I don't put that chapter summary in my document anymore for my YA books. I will just kind of sit down and sketch out what I want the scene to be. So this will happen, I need to mention these different world building things. Then this is the big moment. This is the character's choice moment in the scene. And then at the very end, I'll do this. And then I will bullet point that. So that's like zero drafting. And then I will go back and turn those bullet points into a chapter. And sometimes I only get a half a chapter or a fourth of a chapter, and I'll stop because it's just a lot more methodical now, which is good and bad because I don't know how to stop my brain from working that hard anymore. My brain is thinking about the later drafts. When I started writing, my brain only thought about this draft. And I've lost the ability to do that. I'm thinking about, what is my editor going to say about this? What is the copy editor going to say about this word? And I don't know how to turn that off anymore. So it's really lengthened my drafting process, but the the silver lining in that is that what I finish is a lot cleaner.
Does that get in your way at all from the passionate, the bone you've got a hold of? Like, stop telling me your notes. Let me just follow this thing. I'm a 9-day book writer. So how do you balance that passion, that need to get the story down and be what it's going to be, against being careful, being smart with your time, being effective as a writer?
It is such a battle. Like, Rob, I am living this right now as I work on the sequel to my next YA, the book 2, not sequel, it's the middle of a trilogy. And it is a constant struggle. Like, I was talking to one of my best friends who, she's a writer too, and we read each other's fresh raw, it's called alpha reading. Like, we read each other's like raw drafts, like no editing, just brain dumped. Here's what I wrote, you read it. And we do that for each other. And it's very motivating because it's immediate feedback. But I was just telling her, because we talk pretty much every morning. That's part of our editorial process, is we will talk about what we're going to write that day. We'll usually exercise while we're talking, get the brain warmed up, and then we'll go to our desks and we'll write, and then we'll email each other pages later that day. That's kind of my process now. And what I was telling her was like, I don't know how to turn off my editor brain. I don't know how to turn it off anymore. And so what happens realistically is I get to points where I'm stuck, because I can't let the passion take over, because my brain, I will have an idea that my brain will think of the 20 ways that idea doesn't work or doesn't line up or doesn't cinch. Whereas with Wings of Ebony, I just let it out, and then I massaged it after. And so sometimes I just can't. And I will just be stuck for like weeks. And then something will click, and I will sit back down, and I will find a way around that, or a different way to look at that, or a different angle to work in that idea that I had, and then I'm going again. So it's just a lot more start stop. I would say I'm a more patient writer now than I used to be, and I think it shows in the work. Just from my biased opinion, I think that, they always say your first book, like I said before, like your first book is your worst book, and I see so much beauty in Wings of Ebony, and I'm so proud of that story. But then I can also see like the depth and methodical craft in my current series that is just such a better written book, because I've learned so much the more I write, and I assume my 10th and 20th book will be even better. So I'm excited to get there.
Your first book is maybe your worst book. I don't know 100% that's true, but it's also, for me at least, the book where I'm the most confident. Like, I must be amazing. Look at me writing a book. I never have that confidence again.
That's it. That's so it. I relate to that so hard.
But now that you are a New York Times bestselling author, JL, does that carry over confidence more than burden? When you come to time to draft, you know that this is going to be read. You know what some of the readers are going to look like, right?
I would say it influences me more than I probably admit to myself. Like, if you ask me, my answer is always, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But then there are moments like when I'm revising or I'm reading through something I wrote, and like my editor or a friend who's reading will say, this doesn't feel right. And I just know that it is right. And I don't always know how to explain that. And I'm like, but this moment might seem extraneous, might not seem as significant as it needs to be, but this moment has to be here. Like, this has to exist in this character's story. And sometimes it's because I need to like make that moment more relevant, or make its significance more clear, or seed it better. But I realize that I'm learning to trust my instinct more. So that would imply that I am more confident. But if you were to ask me, my answer is always, I have no idea what I'm doing. But I do feel like my editorial instinct is stronger. And there's just, my good friends who've been in this business much longer than I have and sold millions of books. Well, she always tells me, two of them, I'm thinking, they always tell me, you have to trust yourself. And I'm starting to listen to that more, because they're like, you are like, what you're doing, you have an instinct. And when you abandon that instinct entirely, you risk like losing yourself, losing your voice in your story. And I think when you're writing in traditional publishing, it can be there can be a lot of pressure to sort of do what other people want. And I feel like the more books that I write, the more I feel that pressure. And so being confident, having this confidence that you're talking about is important, because it keeps me rooted in this reality that no, I'm the writer. Like I have the artistic vision and I can't get to a published book by myself. My editor's a genius, but like I am the artist and I need to be able to create the art.